Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 559, where we celebrate the people and organizations of the greater Fresno area. My name is Joe Haydock, and I'm here with Mona Nyandoro Cummings. She is the CEO of a great organization, Tree Fresno. Hi, Mona. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, so glad to have you. Mona, I want to know a little bit about how you came to be involved with Tree Fresno. Can you tell us that?
Sure. Well, I was hired as CEO just a little over 2 years ago. I actually came from a background of nonprofit work, primarily actually in the area of fundraising. But I also have a background in forestry. Interestingly enough, my forestry and sort of natural resource conservation experience was situated in a couple of different countries in Africa. So Portuguese speaking Africa. I had started out my career as a Peace Corps volunteer many years ago after I graduated college and had the opportunity to work on a research project on the island nation of Sao Tome and Principe. And ultimately, they established a national park because of all of that work we did together. And then eventually, in 2010, I was assigned in Mozambique to work with Gorongosa National Park, which is a massive restoration project of a former park that had great great reputation of grandeur when it came to safaris. But it had been majorly poached out during 20 years of civil war. And so there's a restoration project that's actually led by an American philanthropist named Greg Carr. And they've brought in animals from other parts of Southern Africa and have restored that park and created ecotourism, a model of ecotourism and sustainability, working with communities there. And I was assigned there for a period of time to work in the forestry unit, building capacity there in 2010. So when I came back to the United States, I went back to my fundraising career and working with higher education. And eventually, lo and behold, this position came
Here
up
you
with
are.
Tree Fresno, and it married the two things that I love the most. And it's work in forestry and trees, with also working in a community like the Central Valley of California. So you won't see a happier CEO, I think.
Just like that.
Just like that.
So already just listening to you, I want to see the movie about your life or read the book. It sounds both exciting and important, your work and your history. So
Well,
thank you
it's
for
certainly,
sharing that.
I have to add on a personal level, the whole experience had changed my life. My children, their father's from Zimbabwe. So I lead kind of a bicontinental existence. And we're kind of a unique family in that sense. So I can relate to actually to a lot of families here in the Central Valley where we're mixed culturally and even ethnically. And so I think that it's a beautiful combination, and we have the opportunity to celebrate the culture of Zimbabwe here in Fresno.
That's wonderful. Yeah, if you saw a photo of my family, you would see that we are quite the cultural and ethnic mix, which I love, which changes our perspective
It
on
certainly
life
does. It
and how
certainly
to
does.
interact with, yeah.
Absolutely, Joe. And I think it affects my attitudes towards the work that I do. I think that it's actually extremely important that the inclusiveness. I think my work in Peace Corps for over the years has sort of molded my mindset of grassroots development and community engagement, which is, as we move further along in the interview, I think you'll see that that is a strong part of the way that I lead Tree Fresno.
Wonderful. Well, let's talk about Tree Fresno. What is Tree Fresno? Tell us all about that.
Well, we were established in 1985. I love the history of Tree Fresno by a group of concerned citizens. And I always love to quote John Valentino, who is a member of our board and one of the co-founders.
Right.
And obviously, people in this community know he's got a landscaping company, and he's just well versed in all aspects of landscaping and gardening, and even has his own little show. But he actually said to me when I came on board that the small group of concerned citizens thought that maybe the tree could be part of the solution to many of societal problems, including, poor air and water quality, the heat in this area of the world, the lack of shade, the need to address issues related to climate change for the future, even just the sort of the aesthetics of neighborhoods and bringing up communities, property values, just the feeling of comfort and happiness, the happiness factor. And so I love that. So Tree Fresno was started by a group of concerned citizens that thought the tree might be a little bit of a good part of the solution. And so they started with a telethon on TV and raised some money to plant some trees, and then eventually established itself as a nonprofit. Basically, we focus on, over the years, we've focused on trees and trails with the mission of expanding that green space throughout the central San Joaquin Valley. Currently, the last several years, we've been absolutely focused on transforming the San Joaquin Valley with water-wise trees and increased green space. So that's very comprehensive of our need to expand access to green space, but we primarily focus on planting in urban areas, drought-tolerant trees that are expected to live for decades to come.
That's a great mission. And recently, some of your work has made it into the news as we talk about the need for park space and trees and green space in parts of the community which maybe traditionally have been not given the attention necessary in terms of things like trees and parks and green space. Would you like to talk a little bit about the whole need for equity in the planting of trees, and even our approach to how we landscape our world and our community?
Sure, absolutely. I will say that over the last 2 years, I've learned a lot, actually. I've learned a lot about our communities and recognize that there is an inequity between, especially within cities, of where trees are found in green space, accessibility, and basic access to resources. We call that tree equity when it's concerned with trees. We believe that there should be tree equity distributed, as equal as possible throughout the city, depending on, where we can plant, et cetera. There's a historic sort of legacy in cities like Fresno and other cities across the nation. This is not just specific to Fresno, right, where there have been underfunded regions of the city, ignored regions of the city that do not have as many trees as our newly developed higher income communities within the city limits. And so Tree Fresno, through the usage of grants through the state of California, we've been we've been in a great position to receive funding through the state's California climate investments through CAL FIRE's Urban and Community Forestry Program. And the focus of those grants is to actually what we term tree up neighborhoods that need more trees for the variety of reasons that I mentioned earlier, just improvement of quality of life. And so we have investments through CAL FIRE where I negotiate plantings targeted at communities that need more trees. And typically those are defined by a tool that we use called EnviroScreen 3.0. So if your viewers want to look at that particular tool, it's not an uncommon tool that we use. A lot of nonprofits and government agencies use in California, as a multitude of layers that work into the definition of what is termed as a disadvantaged community. And those disadvantaged communities are typically, they're inordinately impacted by pollution, pollution and other aspects related to low quality of life. So shorter lifespans,
Right.
Chronic health conditions, lower income, education, etc. So we have Tree Fresno specializes in actually bringing up quality of life in communities through the planting of trees. And we do that with a model that engages the community in the education and outreach and in partnership. We don't do it alone. We believe that we need to engage the community so that there is a long-term sustainable outlook for these trees that are planted there.
It's a great work. You know, it occurs to me, I've been around a long time. I'm a grandpa. And it seems to me over the course of my life, and especially accelerating over the past several years, there's an increased awareness of the impact of the environment and the physical environment on those factors you were talking about, not just health, but education, poverty. And it's exciting to think about a world in which we're able to provide the things necessary to help combat against those inequities. And we all know a good tree can make your life brilliant. I remember falling in love with a weeping willow in one of my homes when I was a little kid in Fresno and thinking that it was so beautiful. And I remember my daughter, when we lived in Southeast Fresno, we had actually one of maybe the largest Japanese maple I'd ever seen right next to our front porch. And she'd climb up into a crook of it. She called it a reading tree, and she'd read there.
Oh, how lovely.
So kudos to you and to Tree Fresno for the work that you're doing. How can we help? What can people who are hearing you, listening to this, watching this, what are some of the things we can do to help the mission and the efforts of Tree Fresno?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like I mentioned before, Tree Fresno often has the resources to purchase trees and to negotiate the planting of trees. The long-term outlook, the tree care and maintenance is absolutely important. Sometimes we get resistance from cities and school districts because they understand that work is involved in planting more trees and taking care of trees. And I understand that from an economic point of view. What I do realize is that people, the community, is becoming increasingly aware that trees are indeed part of the solution and that we actually need to invest in them. And that includes long-term care and maintenance. So if I were to recommend how someone could be most effective, it would actually be talking to your local council member, asking them what their plan is for the community for trees in a productive way. We have, we don't have to be accusatory. We understand that it does take care and that sometimes trees actually have to be taken out, whether they've aged out or they're diseased. So sometimes I often have to, interface with the community, answering questions of why these things are happening. There are reasons, right tree, right place. We have to choose the right species. We've learned from past mistakes. And that's all the way around, whether it be the city, CAL FIRE, or us. We have to plant trees that are compatible with power lines and housing, concrete infrastructure. So for individuals, I would say talking to others, actually putting pressure on on their leadership, whatever local leadership that they come into contact with. asking them, what is the plan? So I reach out to every city, county, school district in Fresno, Madera, Kings, and Tulare at least once a year and ask them, what's their plan? Okay, if we can't plant now, when are we going to plant? What are your needs? How can we help you? Do you need support in terms of irrigation? Perhaps we can help you with part of that. We often cannot do the entire thing, but we can provide the trees. We can provide the volunteer engagement. So talking to church leadership, we can work with churches. We can work with even private property owners that are located in those areas where they lack tree coverage, that are defined disadvantaged by Cal EnviroScreen. We can work with businesses. So it's reach out to me at Tree Fresno, and that's mona@treefresno.org, and let me know what your ideas are about treeing up these neighborhoods, and we can start the conversation. Because we have a need for finding locations to plant hundreds of trees, perhaps thousands of trees. So every single day, that's my priority. And then, of course, we're building local support of Tree Fresno. So there's a certain amount of work that we do that's not covered by our grants. Luckily, we're a very tight ship here. We have 3 full-time employees, including a tree tech, an office and accounts manager who helps us manage our grants, and then myself. So we get a lot done working with landscape contractors when we have larger projects and partnering and bringing in the community to implement our projects. We typically plant about 2,500 trees a year. So I would encourage, if someone is in the position, a family is in a position, a business, to contribute some level of support to Tree Fresno in the form of an unrestricted donation.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And we will, I will include links for folks so they can see where they can go to see. I think it's treefresno.org, isn't it?
It sure is. Thank you.
So actually, that's super easy. And of course, as Mona mentioned, you can send her an email, I think, making contributions, talking to elected officials, and like you mentioned, even private property owners and businesses. Let's get a lot of trees up in Fresno.
Absolutely. And I'm proud of that Tree Fresno is in a position that we bring resources.
Yes.
So, the ask that I have for just general local, for support of Tree Fresno helps to stabilize a nonprofit like ours into the future. So, but we have significant grant funding to allow us to do the job that we do. So you don't have to buy the trees. You can just help us to support the community outreach and education and volunteer engagement, et cetera.
Which I think, based on listening to you, is the reason that the unrestricted donations are the most valuable to you, because you're able to put those towards the needs that the organization has to fulfill your mission. Absolutely. So that's very exciting. We talked a little bit about maybe a tree donation every time Haydock Real Estate closes an escrow. But what I learned from you, and that I'm excited about, is just an unrestricted donation from the close of escrow is a far more powerful tool.
And that could provide for the care of those trees in a longer term. And that's the issue that we run into with grants. Is there a period of time when it's over, we don't have funding to take care of the trees? And the difference between a professional tree planting organization like ours and an initiative just to plant, millions and millions of trees is the fact that we plant 15-gallon, fairly, 3-year-old trees, and we make our best effort to care for them up to 3 years during that establishment period. Look out for them, just like a puppy. If you get a new puppy, I always explain to people that if you're thinking about a tree, you need to think about feeding and watering and caring for that tree. And that establishment period is key. And that's what is the difference between just planting a sapling just arbitrarily with no irrigation, whereas we always require irrigation. So our trees, we hope and pray that they last for 80 to 150 years. That's our goal.
Wonderful. Well, here's to trees. Here's to Tree Fresno, and
Mhm.
Mona, here's to you. I really appreciate you spending a little time talking with me today. I'm excited to promote your organization and do what we can to help not just plant trees, but plant sustainable trees and care for them
There we go.
and just improve our community all the way. We know trees are a good idea, but let's do it in an organized way. Earlier, it sounded like you were basically saying something to the effect of, you know, if we don't make a plan, then that's our plan. Our plan is unplanned, and that's not a good plan. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Right.
we're glad to have your leadership and your organization. Thank you so much. I hope you have, I know you're covering from a big event from yesterday.
Yeah.
I hope you have a delightful day and just a wonderful future. And I hope also that through our efforts, Tree Fresno will gain some support and some following.
I appreciate that. And I encourage everybody to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, our social media. That's a fun way to keep up with things and to see pictures of our work with the community. Thanks, Joe.
All right. All right. Thank you, Mona. Folks, go follow Tree Fresno on Instagram and on Facebook. Check out their website, treefresno.org. It's got some wonderful information. You can do what I did, which is sign up to receive their email communications and their newsletters. And we really appreciate Mona stopping by to share with us today. Take care.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.